real success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the Hitstreak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and joining me all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm proud to say I can call this cat a friend. He's freaking awesome. His facility out there is absolutely incredible, folks. Help me welcome the founder and CEO of Scoggins International, Steven Scoggins. Brother, what is happening, man?
Dude, man, what is going on? I love your setup, man. We talking about bragging about my setup. Your setup's nice and tight too, dude. I love it. I can't believe it's already been like 2 or 3 months since the last time I had a chance to hang out in person since the last event, man. But I was so excited to see you with us.
Well, brother, it was I was incredibly impressed, and I appreciate it. The team did an amazing job. We're extremely proud of what we got here. However, we're just getting started. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go. Yeah, let's do it, man. I love it.
So let me talk about this facility. So you are you're the owner of the CHE Beacon Center in Raleigh, and folks, like this is an event space. But I'm gonna let him describe it. Because it's too much going on to like really make. It's one of one. It's absolutely incredible. You got to see it to believe it. You've had everybody there. Tell them about this space.
Oh gosh, man. So I stumbled across this space. So I own 7 businesses total currently. Ranging from construction to real estate to thought leadership. And I got down to the place where I was looking for a space I could put all my businesses under one roof. And so I go on the Google search and I start looking around, and this is like 2018. And I find this place. And it used to be like a furniture store and a Salvation Army and all this, that, and the other thing. I'm thinking, wait a minute here. There might be something to this. And then I noticed it had a small, what we refer to as a good-sized auditorium in it. And I said, okay, well, this is cool. And I had been flirting with the idea of bringing back some of our own signature live events that I do for my own personal brand, Unstoppable Startup and Unstoppable Live. And I started like working towards that, only to discover that COVID was a real thing. And then I was able to partner up with some folks, mutual friends of ours, of Barry and Blue, who did a lot of work with Tony Robbins. And we said, the heck with it. We're going to build this amazing event space. We added floor to ceiling LED walls, elation lighting, sound galore. Can live stream 25,000 plus it simultaneously, can seat about 400 people. And I did that all because I wanted to do it for the audience that we have.
Right.
Well, then one of our good buddies comes to me and says, hey, are you interested in helping me with a book launch? I'm like, sure. I was like, who's it for? He goes, oh yeah, you probably know him. His name's Ed Milet. I'm like, yeah, I'm good with knowing. Yeah, that's cool. We can make that introduction. And sure enough, May of last year, we opened up the event space to other thought leaders for the first time ever when we launched Ed Milet's Power of One More book here in Raleigh. And when we did that, I discovered something really interesting that I did not know at the time. And that was I enjoyed putting on live events for other people just as much as I enjoyed putting them on for myself. And that's what started us down this pathway of trying to serve the public and either sponsoring live events and having, hosting them, putting on our own live events, or even helping thought leaders. Like we got a brand new group in here getting ready to do their live event tomorrow. That's our brand amplifier program that helps thought leaders get their keynote footage and signature stuff. All of that to try to help the community get out there and win.
Man, that is absolutely incredible. That was I saw footage from that launch with Ed, and man, like I was immediately like drawn to the space right then and there. It was really cool, and it's so neat because you mentioned you guys can seat 450, but your stream, it's a hybrid. Like you guys are streaming live at the same time, and you can see them all over the walls on the sides, dude. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Like where'd you get that idea?
Well, it's because I'm a speaker, right? And one of the things that I was struggling with in the virtual environments is, you can talk to a Zoom camera all day long, which is great. I mean, there's a time and a place for it. But when you're trying to bring in multiple audiences at once, you typically have to talk to multiple cameras at once. So you're constantly pivoting and turning and like trying to figure out where you're aiming your presentation at, to make sure that everybody feels engaged and sponsored in and all that kind of stuff. And the reality is I was like, wait a minute, if this was a real audience, the audience would be in front. So what we did is we put the primary audience, the live audiences in front, and then we set all the camera equipment up and things around that nature to make sure that they always were in front. So next thing you know, now you've got everybody aiming the same direction, and lo and behold, this trickiness of trying to figure out how to communicate to both audience was a race, because you're constantly communicating to the same audience all at one time.
Right. Man, that's freaking awesome. Isn't it great how sometimes like adversity causes like new ideas, and then you come back better, bigger and stronger than you were before? Like that's just how it kind of works, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would all say amen to that, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I think I've learned far more from the mistakes and the challenges that I've made and ran through than I ever had from any kind of success. You know what I'm saying? And you think about all the content that we're putting out nowadays between both of our brands about, you know, trying to help serve the people we used to be, and trying to make a difference in the world. All of that comes from the pain, not from the pleasure.
That's right.
Right? We're not bragging about what we're doing now. We're talking more about, hey, this is where we come from. This is why we think we're relevant. This is why we think we can help you. And when you lean into that category, a lot of really good things happen.
Well, man, like you're a very dynamic guy. You got a lot of awesome things happening. You got a kick-ass podcast. You're a kick-ass speaker. You got a kick-ass construction company. I mean, dude, it's a lot happening, and I want to talk about all those things. But like, I want to take everybody back a little bit, because it's easy for everybody to focus on the finished product. And I think that's the hardest, the biggest disconnect from beginners to people like you and where you're at is they can't see the path and the journey that it took to get there, and all the things that you overcame, that they will in turn have to overcome new problems and things just like that, right? So you launched your construction company. You were homeless, is that correct?
Yeah, I made some bad choices. Pride, arrogance being the top two. Which led me to, unfortunately, losing everything that I had to my name at that time. And I didn't have a whole lot, but I'd been given an amazing shot by one of my dad's employers to start a company for him, or a company within a company. And at 19 years old, high school dropout, trying to take care of my family, the whole deal. What happened was he gives me this shot. I go and like bust it, and I'm making all kinds of money at 19 years old.
Yeah.
And sure enough, what happens? You get cocky, you get arrogant. You've never been trained to handle money. You've never been trained to handle emotional intelligence or leadership or anything of that nature. So of course I'm like, yeah, it's all me, baby. Look at it rain, kind of thing. And the next thing you know, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God checked me for a reason. So he's like, hey, buddy, I might be blessing you, but let me tell you something really about yourself. You're going to learn more about this journey from these experiences you're about to have, rather than this theoretical success.
That's right. Sometimes I think when he knows we're not ready, he gives us a taste of it to make sure that when we get knocked back down, that we get back up and continue to seek all the things that we wanted in the first place. Like for me, it was after I was done playing professional sports and I didn't know who I was or what I was going to be. We got into we actually started an online marketing company this is right before camera phones were a thing, and it did really, really well, and it made us enough money to buy our first restaurant that we turned into like a club. And we did 5 over the next 6 years, and those businesses did great revenue. I didn't know how to pay myself. I didn't know anything. And so like, looking back, there was a lot of missed opportunity, but man, the lessons were great because I still am able to apply and use those today, So that's crazy how similar our journeys have been. Go on.
Yeah, man. Well, the crazy thing is the more and more I meet with people who have become uber successful, no matter what that definition is, they're not only they have a level of wealth in their relationships and their finance, but they're also like good humans, right?
Yeah.
I haven't met one yet that did not start out in a place of discouragement or lack of clarity or seeking direction, right? I think again, as a person of faith, I would say those that seek find. Right? If you're not seeking, you're never going to find it. And I think that comes down to really one key thing, and that's, are you worthy of seeking your future? Right? Most of us struggle with this level of worth. We struggle with this level of, am I good enough? Am I the kind of person that can bring this thing to reality? Not even know what this thing might even be. And one of the things I was telling my son just recently, Justin, I was like, look, dude, just go out and knock something over. Well, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Go out and knock something over. Go out and take the trash out for somebody. Go out and work at a restaurant. Like, just go and do something. And you'll find that the thing you're supposed to be done, that you're supposed to do, will be the thing that you'll find along the way of the journey of doing the other things that are preparing you to get there.
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, man. All right. So launched your construction company. So somebody like gave you a hand up, not a handout, right?
Yeah.
And made some money now. And it said God knocked you back down. Now keep going through that journey, man. I'm intrigued.
Well, again, it's this man that had poured into me. We refer to him all the time as Old Man Myrick, only because his name is Steve. Mine's Steven. So Steve Myrick. He was my dad's employer, and for some reason, around 16 or 17 years old, he would pull me down off my dad's framing crew because that's what I did on the summers and weekends. Like I worked. If we weren't in school, I was working. But he would always pull me down, and he'd put me in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, and he would constantly talk about real estate. He would constantly talk about staying away from alcohol. He would talk about, what I now know as personal development, but what I then knew as just him trying to mentor me. But I was like, why are you telling me this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
One afternoon, I'm probably 17 years old, 16, 17 years old. He says, I got a question for you. I'm like, sure. He said, what is the difference between a rich man and a poor man? What's the difference? And I was like, well, duh, of course it's money. Everybody knows it's freaking money. He's like, absolutely not. I was like, you would have thought he was going to pop me in the back of my head. And he goes, no, it's the way they think. He said, I got a big question for you. So, okay. He goes, do you want to learn to think like me or continue thinking like your father? Now, here's the contrast to that. Steve was uber successful. He was uber generous. He was an uber hard worker. He was very gifted at business. Very astute in how he communicated.
Right.
Good old Southern boy. I mean, he had some twang to his voice and stuff. My father, on the other hand, struggled with alcoholism for a number of years.
Okay.
Lived paycheck to paycheck at best.
Gotcha.
Battled to put food on the table often.
Yeah.
Battled to keep the lights on often, which is why I ended up dropping out of high school to help pay the bills for a little while. And the crazy part was it wasn't because he wasn't a hard worker. My dad's work ethic is insane. To this day, he wouldn't know what the word retirement means, even if he had all the money in the world.
Right.
Now, I'm proud to say my dad overcame a lot of adversity and became one hell of a father and a grandfather and beyond. But the transition of trying to understand who I should be listening to was new for me.
Gotcha.
Right. Most of us, when we're in a circle of influence, we got a circle of family and friends and people around us, we don't realize we actually have a choice on who we get to listen to.
Gotcha.
This was the first time that I ever was given what I felt like was the choice. Like I had never actually had that before. Like I can choose to listen to you or I can choose to listen to my dad. Right. My father's signature line to me one time when he lost his first business was Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by. I was like, in my spirit, I knew that was wrong.
Yeah.
But I still accepted it.
Right.
And I find a lot of people that I end up helping along the way, they've got similar life lives that they've also accepted.
Right.
And it was that transition, that change of perspective, that change of choice, that change of conversational value with myself and Steve that ultimately began to plant the seeds that would later become something meaningful.
There's a friend of mine, Hunter Bledsoe, who is an amazing thinker. We were talking about we coach baseball, our kids' baseball teams together, and he's a sports agent, and they're just absolutely killing it. And but we were talking a lot about how circumstances don't define you. And he has a quote that I've used multiple times, and if it gets pulled out of context a lot, but man, it's powerful. Check this out. He said life is fair. Everybody's price is just different.
Yeah.
And you know what, man, what I'm finding is the cool thing about this show is I've been able to interview so many awesome people like you and hear your stories. Like, first of all, I'm incredibly blessed. My parents didn't split up until I was long gone out of the house. There wasn't alcohol in my home growing up. Nobody did drugs. That was never a thing. So I was very blessed and almost sheltered. You know what I'm saying? So, but man, like so many of you guys have overcome so much adversity and just what we'd consider not a great situation, maybe an upgrade. I mean, I'm sure you had a great relationship with your parents and they're amazing people and everything, but like, again, those things do make an impact on a child. Yeah. And those impacts you carry them into adulthood, right? So, man, like folks, like check it out. You're hearing it over and over again. Like your situations are not like exactly unique. They're unique to you, but like you can surround yourself with so many amazing people that have come up, that have overcome so many amazing things, like this guy right here, right? So, like who were some of the you mentioned the guy that gave you a shot. So that guy was probably a pretty important person in your life, probably still today. Would you? How many mentors like took you under their wing outside of your parents to help you through those things?
Oh gosh, I find that each mentor leads you to a new mentor, right? So. Steve was my first one. And then when I went back into business for myself the second time, when I started the company out of the trash piles and stuff, when I did that, the customer base became my mentors. I started learning, okay, well, this is what it takes to make them happy. And I started doing that. And then about 5 years ago, I stumbled on something else in regards to mentorship. And I've actually coined the phrase mentorship matrix. I just feel like it's this key thing, because one of the things I know about you that I get all the time, I'm sure you do as well, in their DMs is like, hey, will you mentor me? Will you coach me? Will you teach me? Will you do this? Will you do that?
Yes.
And then I realized a long time ago that you can't coach the world, right? But you can put content out there that allows you to make a difference.
Yes.
And this mentorship matrix concept ended up being pretty powerful in that I found there's really, mentorship can come in really four key phases.
Okay.
First one is mentorship from your aspirational mentor.
Okay.
So that's the person you want to be like. There was a time when I wanted to be like good old Dave Ramsey for a while, right? And there was a time I wanted to be like John Maxwell for a while, then Ed Milet for a while, and all these. Those are aspirational people. There are physical traits, personal traits, behavior traits, learning lessons to be learned, etc. from them that you can learn in a variety of different capacities.
Right.
Going to live events, which is obviously something we both love.
Absolutely.
Right. But what you're doing is you are learning from an aspirational mentor. The question is making sure that aspirational mentor is giving you character-driven, character-based content that you can then absorb. The next one is the digital mentor, right? That can be anybody and everybody that you resonate with the content that they provide. So you want to learn more about real estate? Fantastic. There's a whole host of people on YouTube and podcast and everybody that you can learn about real estate. You want to learn more about banking or investments or all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. There's digital content for you right now.
That's right.
That you can do that, right? The third one to me is going to be the peer-to-peer mentor. That's you and I, right? You and I, when we got together the first time, we were like already bouncing ideas back and forth about, all right, well, how would we do this same kind of thing in Nashville? Like, what would that look like? And,
that's right.
That's a peer-to-peer ping pong buddy, if you will. The fourth one, I think, is the most underrated. And the fourth one is called the historical mentor. I stole that phrase from a good buddy of mine, Doug Stewart, who taught an entire mentorship class one afternoon.
Yeah.
And a historical mentor is any book or resource that is still available for you to consume, even though that person may have moved on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So for me, it might be the Bible, right?
Yeah.
It might be, it could be Moby Dick, right? Whatever your thing is, right? But there's lessons, there's principles, and there's things inside of these different pages, if you will, that ultimately will help you shape it. So when you ask about mentorship, I really got mentorship in all four categories at different times and at different phases based on where I was in my journey. And I find that all people, when what was the old analogy? When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
That is true.
Yes.
When you're finally ready to receive the information, when you're finally ready to put the stuff to work, when you're out of analysis paralysis, that's when this stuff actually kicks in.
Yeah.
That's when you actually start gravitating towards certain pieces of content. So that was kind of my mentorship kind of matrix, if you will, or mentorship makeup, I guess, if you didn't call it that way.
One of the things, sometimes you hear all these amazing things from amazing people. Like I just used a quote from Hunter Bledsoe, right? Like, it's very rare that you hear something that's said for the very first time, like ever.
True.
You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, folks, you're taking all these things that you learn and you're repackaging them with your own flavor and your own spin, and then and then that's your gift that you give to the public or your market, right? So, you can't learn enough from all these amazing people, and there's nothing. It's back in the day, if you stole a book report from somebody and turned it in, they would call it, you plagiarized it, right? But it's a little different, But at the end of the day, if you're doing a history book report, you're you're taking the same history that everybody else is doing it, and you're putting your pack, giving it your own package and your own flavor, right? So that's all.
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
doing
you're
here.
asking yourself one question, right?
That's it.
The question you're asking as you're consuming that content is what does this mean to me?
That's right.
Like, what is the meaning that I'm placing on this? You know, Eric Thomas and I, ET, have become reasonably good friends, and he says a lot of things that, like, dude, you talking fortune cookie too? Me too, right? Kind of thing, you know. And he had this. I remember he said something along the lines of a long time ago. He said inside of every principle is a promise, right?
Wow, yeah.
Unmistakably to me, I'm on stage one afternoon, and I'm like, guys, you don't have to realize, you don't understand. Principles govern promises, right? Both of them mean the same thing. If you want to get a certain promise in your life, you have to live by specific principles. In other words, the principles make the decision before you have to make it.
That's right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, if I go back to my faith journey, it's like that the Bible says very clearly, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. And how I say it might be differently than how Eric says it, but the reality is we might be talking to two different audiences and both need to hear it.
That's right. That's right. You know, it's kind of like different churches, and they're all basically giving you the same message, but you're hearing it from different pastors, different voices, different interpretations. You know, so it's so true, and it's nothing new, although it feels new sometimes, just because it's a new space, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, keep going. Sorry to interrupt you with your story. Let's get back in there. Where were we?
Oh gosh, it's one of the situations where I started the business. I was given the second chance. My father, this is one of the first times I remember my father showing up in my life, was when I actually went to go start the business. See, I had just gotten back on my dad's couch.
Okay.
Like literally, I had been homeless for a while. I'd been couch surfing, car surfing, meaning staying in other people's cars.
Wow.
I had no stability whatsoever. And my father gets me this second chance to be back on the framing crew. So to him, as long as I was making $12 an hour, swinging a hammer, nailing some nails, carrying some studs, doing some work, that I was going to have a fulfilled life, so to speak, right? Because Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by,
right?
Kind of thing. Now, again, I knew intuitively that wasn't true, but what had to shift? Well, this particular afternoon, Steve's, the guys that had taken over from me for the first time that I had the business, I was sitting nearby them, and they were I overheard them saying that they were going to quit and leave, and Steve had been mistreating them, and all of which I knew was not true. These guys were clearly into all kinds of various addictions that were obviously clouding their judgment.
Right.
But when I did that, I overheard it, and I just remember walking away from this house thinking really angry, or being really angry, and this quietness, if you will, in my soul actually said, "Well, isn't that what you did?"
Oh, wow.
Like it was like the first of many gut checks I've had along the way.
Yeah.
And in doing so, my father's walking, kind of towards me, and I'm like, he's going to get the checks for the week. And then he sees me walking past him, and I go and knock on Steve's window. And then Steve rolls down his window and says, "What can I do for you, boy?" Good old Southern boy style. And I said, "Well, I overheard these guys they're saying this, that, or the other thing. If they don't come back Monday, can I come back? Can I take over?"
Yeah.
"With what tools, boy? I ain't buying your tools again. I ain't that foolish." I'm like, I totally get it. It's my fault. I understand. I said, if they don't come back, I'll figure all that out. Yeah. I had zero idea how I was going to figure it out. I did not go up to that window with a plan, thinking, well, if I go and I save up all my pennies and my nickels, I'll go do this, this, and this, right? This was a complete faith journey for me.
Gotcha.
And after about 15 or 20 minutes of going back and forth and him kind of like really kind of sizing me up a little bit, he finally said, "I'll tell you what, if they're not here by 9 a.m. on Monday, I'll let you finish the house they're working on and we'll go from there. How's that?" I said, "Done."
Opportunity.
Yep. I shook his hand. He rolled back up his window. I'm wearing a nail apron. Now, when I say nail apron, it's like a bag that said Lowe's across the front with a string, right? This wasn't even a full-fledged tool belt. I walked past. My father overhears the conversation. He's coming. He's like, "Boy, what are you doing?" He's like yelling at me. And I just, for the first time, I was like, "No, this is something I have to do." Like I finally let the courage, if you will, that I had been keeping tucked away, finally fire up and finally awaken something inside of me that maybe said, what if it is possible?
Yeah.
What if Steve is right and my father is wrong? What if? And I find that people will what if themselves to death, but they'll what if themselves to death in a negative fashion rather than a positive fashion.
Right.
something interesting happened. My dad shut his mouth, turned around, went over to the beat up work van, undid the doors, started pulling tools out of the back of this beat up work van that Steve owned. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, do you remember growing up during the summers? Yeah. Do you remember framing houses? Yeah. Do you remember putting siding on? Yeah. What do we make the ladders out of? Wood. Walkboards? Wood. Braces? Wood. Saw benches? Wood. All right, boy, start pulling stuff out of the trash piles. We got stuff to build. And he fired up the saw and he fired up the nail gun and he helped me build much of the things that I needed to get started on Monday, and still not knowing if these guys are showing up.
Yeah.
Complete faith journey. We invested the entire weekend and my entire paycheck of $176, all the money I had in the world, in preparing for Monday.
Wow.
Not knowing if Monday was going to become a reality. And sure enough, Monday morning rolls around. I'm out there sitting on the curb at 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. Steve rolls around. He's like, hey, what you doing? Can I go yet? It ain't 9 o'clock yet. He'd go back another hour. I'll be sitting on the curb again. Can I go yet? It ain't 9 o'clock yet. Finally, he does that 2 or 3, 4 times. And about 9:06, he rolls around and rolls down and said, boy, what you waiting on? Right? I went to work. And then I built that business piece by piece, brick by brick. A lot of bad decisions, some good ones. A lot of challenges, developing me as a leader, developing me as a business owner. Dude, it wasn't even 5 years ago before I could even actually understand what a P&L statement was.
Man.
But yet I had built at that time, a sizable 7-figure business, and that particular business finally became a high 8-figure business. And that's what kind of led me down this journey of, okay, well, personal development truly is personal.
Oh, wow.
It's choice.
That's right.
Right? You choose who you listen to. You choose what you research. You choose what distracts you or doesn't distract you. You choose what you commit to. You choose who you want to be when you grow up. And either you focus there or you don't. And what I did was I chose to focus on who I could become more than who I already was.
Folks, we are hanging out with Steven Scoggins, the founder and CEO of Scoggins International. StevenScoggins.com is the website. You can check him out on Instagram, Steven_Scoggins. I highly recommend that you do, right? So, all right, so that was the birth of your construction company, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So what came next? Was it the book or the speaking? How long have you been in your space? When did you find that space? Because, like, folks, I'm telling you, this is it's incredible. You go in and you see this amazing auditorium with all this technology and lights and cameras. It's like, it feels like a gigantic, the mothership that they say is in our universe right now. I think that's it. I think that's what he's got there. But then you go back and it's a gigantic warehouse full of production equipment, construction equipment, and everything. And he's got all these offices with secret tunnels. It's unbelievable, man. It's so cool. So tell me how you got there after you got your construction company going.
Man, you know what? To save time, I discovered that when I would share my story publicly, no matter how big or how small, I remember my very first speaking engagement was talking to 6 people in a Golden Corral. And that was probably the early 2000s. And at that time, I was just sharing a little small segment of my journey. Because up to that point, I'd been ashamed of my journey. I didn't want people to know I'd been homeless. I didn't want people to know I was a GED kid, like that I didn't go to college and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And then as I began to share it, I began to realize that people didn't lean away like I thought they would. They actually leaned in. Mm-hmm. And every now and again, I would say something that they would jot down on a piece of paper, and then they would take something away from it. And I was like, huh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I went to an event one time. This goes back to events, right? A good buddy of mine was hardcore in the Amway business, which I did that when I was a kid. More power to you. It's your vehicle. It can become successful if you choose to go that route. I chose not to. But he did this, and I got to see a speaker named Les Brown on one of their events. He invited me to this free summit thing they were doing in Greensboro.
Les is awesome.
I walked in, and not knowing anybody from anyone other than the friend that brought me, and all of a sudden, I won't do it justice, but Les says, and I was legitimately retarded or something, like however he says it, right? He's like, he basically calls himself retarded.
Yeah.
He's like, if I can do it, you can do it. And he goes, it's possible, folks. It's possible. And there was something inside of that was like, I know I'm just getting started, but something's waking up, right? And I think that all of us are either sleepwalking through life or constantly waking up to the next level in life. And in this particular instance, that's what got me going. I started sharing my story. I started doing this. I started attending events. I started reading books, or at that time, you had books on tape. It wasn't even it's like five cassettes tapes to have a book.
Yep.
I started listening to that everywhere I went. I started cutting out the noise. I stopped watching as much TV and hanging out with my friends and all that kind of stuff. I just committed. I committed for 4 or 5 years to really kind of grind it out. And I realized that my level of education had nothing to do with any success that I could attain. My level of relationship was going to play an instrumental part of my level of success, so to speak, that I would one day have. But more importantly, my level of development. So I became in love with personal development. And as I began to go to more and more events and do more and more things and share more and more, I would start to have little small crowds of people, just encircle me and ask me questions about business and whatever. And, it's part of the reason why we created the program Unstoppable Startup, where I help early stage entrepreneurs go from 0 to 3 million.
Tell me more about that. I love that. And the name is incredible. My buddy Brad Lee, everything he has is based on the rhino, and it's because the rhino is unstoppable, right?
Yeah,
so I love
that's
it.
right.
I love it.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that.
Well, think about this. What is the definition of stuck? Not making progress. What is unstoppable? Consistently making progress. Not necessarily busting through walls or breaking down doors. It could be those things. Yeah. But those that are unstoppable find a way to keep going when they don't want to. They find a way to overcome that, whatever's standing in front of that mindset. I shared with you before we hopped on air today, I've had a technology day from hell today.
They happen to the best of us.
Yeah, internet popping, going on and off, and I got a live event that's supposed to happen here in a couple hours, right? So all of this kind of stuff. But then I have to remind myself, it's like, you just need to keep going. You need to keep going. You need to keep going. Well, I discovered that most business owners, of the 8 out of 10 businesses that fell in the first 10 years, fell for one of 7 or 8 reasons. Okay. And it's the same 7 or 8 reasons over and over again. Yeah. The number one reason is ignorance. They don't know what they don't know. Right. So they're not going to make great choices if they don't have information to do that. So I said, well, how did I get to where I'm at? Well, the first thing that I did was I became more aware about myself. I started working on me as the owner. In fact, the biggest mistake I ever made in building a business was not building myself along the way. And I want everybody to understand that it has to be at the heart of building a business, as the owner has to build themselves from within continually. Yeah. Well, then I started, okay, well, what's the next stages? Well, reality is there's really only 5 stages in business. Okay. There's your development, number one. There's the sales opportunity. How are you going to sell? What are you going to sell? When are you going to sell? How are you going to put price on it? Like all of that kind of stuff, sales. Then there's fulfillment. How are you going to deliver that product, good, or service to the marketplace, whether it's a digital product, a physical product, or whatever. Right. Right. Finance. Like, how are you going to give and receive money? What are you going to do with those resources when you get them? How are you going to build, what we would call retained earnings or capital for CapEx expenditures, all these different terms I had no idea about when I started. That's right. Right. Well, and then the fifth one is, how do you create a raving fan? Right. Raving fan retention. That was in the book, Raving Fan. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. Right. Well, when you break them into those 5 categories, you start giving direction and clarity to any entrepreneur who's trying to break free from the next level, right? Whether they got an idea they're trying to get going, whether they're at $1 million trying to go to 2, whether they're out there at 500,000 trying to break through the $1 million ceiling, which is the very first ceiling. All of those come down to those same categories repeatedly over and over again, and based on where they are in those categories. You may be really good at sales and fulfillment, but you may suck at finance and your business will fail. That's right. You know what I'm saying? So all these parts and pieces began to shape up what became Unstoppable Startup. So now I'll do a 3-day live event during the summertime. In fact, good friend Ed Milet's going to be our signature keynote when he comes out again this next go round. Yeah, good. And awesome. We're going to focus on the early stage entrepreneur. There's all kinds of books and resources and all kinds of stuff for entrepreneurs that are trying to level up. I want to serve the people who are just getting started or trying to figure it out or trying to grind it out, right? I call it grind and hustle or level and muscle. Like you've got to kind of really kind of grind it.
I love that. So, folks, you want to be around winners and folks that have been successful in whatever it is they're trying to get. You got to understand, we mentioned before, life is fair, everybody's price is just different. Stephen had every reason to say, Nick, we need to reschedule. He's got a full day today, a full plate. And sometimes when you have operations that big, we struggle with it here from time to time. You can't control if power goes out, you lose internet. Like that's just those God things happen, and they're just out of your control. And he had a choice, and I'm grateful that he made the one that he did, because there was a whole team here that he understands had done a lot of prep and a lot of things. This has been on the books for about a month. And he still made it happen regardless of all the things that came his way. And I would have totally understood if he needed to reschedule. But, brother, I'm so grateful to you for your professionalism. And that's the people that you want to work with, right? You got to work with people like that. You know what I mean?
Dude, I can't thank you enough for having me on, man. I love hanging with you. I love what you guys are doing. I love what you're trying to do. I'm excited to see where your next level kind of goes to.
Well, if I'm full transparency, I want to get you to Nashville and we partner up and do some cool stuff. That's what I want to do.
Let's do it.
But on that note, so you mentioned the event that's coming up in May. Let's plug that a little bit. So and how do people you probably got some people signing up already?
Yeah. So what we do is I realized this just recently that we would normally wait till we got into live event mode before we start promoting events and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What we've done recently is, what? We're getting in so much interest that we're just doing join the wait list. So if they can go to stevenscoggins.com/events, click the button, join the wait list, and pick the event that makes sense for them, and we'll serve them the best way we possibly can. I will tell you that one of the things that I'm very passionate about the events that we do is they are designed to be practical in nature. So I might share some of my heart from stage and teach you guys some stuff from stage. But on top of that, I want every single speaker to then go out into the audience, so to speak, and actually do some workshop of some stuff. Ooh. Because I believe that all that theoretical without the tactical won't take you anywhere. So I want to give you the tactical means to get there.
That is right. Well, are we doing okay on time? You still got a few minutes here?
I got about 2 more minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah, 2 more minutes.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to talk about as far as any events, anything you got going on, where to buy some books, any of those types of things? Like, folks, people, he's building a legacy that's going to outlive him. At my house, we say every generation has to be better than the previous one. That's what I'm constantly pushing my son to do. It was what I was taught to do. If you keep those patterns going, things are good, right? So, Stephen, anything else that you want to leave the folks with today?
Oh gosh, I'll tell you what. I'll leave you guys with a quote that Steve Marriott gave me that has become my battle cry. It was one of those quiet moments in that Jeep Grand Cherokee, with the windows up, air conditioning blowing, smelling like mothballs, and he said, "Stephen, I always want you to remember something." I was like, "Okay, what do you?" And this is after my homeless journey. This is when I'm actually listening finally. He said, "Stephen, you have to be willing to do today what others won't, and you will have tomorrow what others don't."
I love it.
So whatever's in front of you, whatever you're scared of, whatever you're fearful of, whatever's not making sense, whatever's in your way, rather than try to run away from it, I'm going to encourage you to run through it or grow through it, as some would say. Because what you're trying to grow through and what you're trying to become ends up creating that unstoppable tenacity. See, becoming unstoppable it's not theory. It's a lifestyle. Either you get up and you try again, or you don't.
That's right.
And if you get up and try again, you will be living out the essence of unstoppable.
It's in all of you, folks. All of you learned how to walk, and it took a while, and you fell down a whole bunch of times, but you kept on getting up, right?
That's right.
Well, folks, once again, big shout out and thanks to the founder and CEO of Scoggins International Incorporated, Stephen Scoggins. You can check him out at stevenscoggins.com, on Instagram at Stephen_Scoggins. All these links and everything mentioned today will be in our show notes. Brother, thank you much for being a freaking awesome dude, making this happen today. I can't thank you enough.
Appreciate it, man. Love you, dude. We'll catch up soon.
Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.